Hi, my name is Peter Gordon, and this is Organizing Life's Daily Demands. I'm a daily money manager. We help people pay their bills. They help them with processing insurance claims. We do all the non-investment side of personal finance for clients. And the purpose of this podcast and video is to introduce people, other professionals, as well as other topics concerning dealing with life's daily demands that don't have to do with the non-financial side of finance. And today I'm thrilled to have a very good friend. Actually, I've known Gary longer than I've known anyone else in my life outside of my family. And that's Gary Stein. How you doing today, Gary?
I'm doing very well, Peter. Hello from across the border.
Where are you?
Ottawa, Ontario, in Canada.
Yeah. So before we get into how we know each other and what the topic is going to be, tell us about what you do, and then we'll talk about how it's not the topic we're going to be talking about.
Thank you. I am a lawyer, or as Americans like to say, attorney. I've been a lawyer for going on 34 years. I've worked in the private sector, but I've worked mostly in a nonprofit organization in Ottawa that provides legal aid services to the most vulnerable people in Ottawa. And I've been a lawyer there on staff, and I've been the executive director of the organization. That's what I've been doing. I just took a break last year from doing that in the hope of shifting my career slightly, and that's on track.
That's great. And wherever you end up, they'll be very lucky to have you.
Thank you.
I'm excited to be part of that journey. So I want to talk a little bit how we know each other. We met when I was 10, and I guess Gary was like 8.5. And we went to a place called Terra Alta, which was a cottage with cottages in the Adirondack Mountains, in the northeast Adirondack Mountains of New York. And half the people came from Montreal. They came south a few hours. And the other half came from Brooklyn. They went north a few hours. And we became fast friends that first summer. And I got to know Gary and his whole family, which is going to be the point of this podcast. And those were magical summers. And we actually stayed in contact. We kind of fell in and out for a while. Do you remember when we got back together?
I do. Well, I think you started it. You were in college, and I think you were in London, England.
Yeah.
And you saw a stamp or something that was Canadian, and you remembered my address from my childhood. And somehow the letter got to me, and we reconnected. I think I was 20.
Yeah. I guess I was almost 22. And that was time when we were younger, we were pen pals. Something you don't hear a whole lot about now, especially with technology and how things have changed. So that's how we know each other. And we started spending a week every year together 31 years ago. It was kind of amazing.
It's right.
That's right. My son Jacob and my partner was 4 months old. And I say that's the best week of the year, every year.
We had an amazing time.
There are a lot of great weeks, and I would rate this one consistently, number one. So that's how we know each other. And do you want to I want you to tell them why I want us to talk.
Sure. So like you said, we have been very old friends, and we've shared basically everything about our lives all year round, but especially when we spent a week sharing a cottage together in the Adirondacks. And this past summer was a bit of a difficult one because my mom had been diagnosed with lymphoma, lymphatic cancer, earlier in the year. And she was going through chemo treatments during the year, and things seemed to be going well. And then they stopped going well, and the cancer was too aggressive, and she passed away. She passed away actually peacefully. I can talk a bit about how that process worked out. It was actually as a death goes, a positive experience for our family, for me. And this just happened September 24th. It's still very fresh in my mind, in our family's minds. And I'm also so we went through a process after she died, and then my mother had named me as the executor of her will. And she had some instructions that she had left for us in the will. And I think you want to talk a bit about that, because my mom is an amazing character and always did things her way and never did things according to the usual way. So that might be of interest.
That's exactly it. And, so the theme is organizing life's daily demands. And so why are we talking about death, and passing? Because the whole point is that we have to make decisions in our life about our passing. I guess you don't have to. And I deal with plenty of people who don't, and the ramifications thereof. But you have the opportunity to do that. And more, it's common. One of the things that I do is I suggest to people to have a prepaid funeral. And I knew I didn't have that when my father passed. And as a result, when I was in mourning, I had to set up a funeral. It was my responsibility with my family. And when I got into this business, I found out about prepaid funerals, and we did that for my mom. And it was one phone call, and everything was done, and set up, and everything was in place. So what Gary's going to talk about takes that a step further, and it's unique. And I think that it's something that people should consider. I think it's something that would be great for trust and estates attorneys to offer their clients in a way that might not happen, but they're advocates in all parts of our lives now. And maybe this will be a future profession. I suggested it to Gary, but I think he's going in a different direction. But let's hear what we're talking about.
Sure. I actually have my mother's will right here in front of me. And what I'm going to read you is something that wasn't a surprise to me. Like, my mother had written this will with a lawyer in 2017 and had given me a copy of it in advance. I gave a copy to my siblings in advance, so we all knew what to expect. And as my mom realized that that things were not going well for her, and she basically decided to, make sure that things were going to be in place exactly as she had written. So she started telling us certain things. But let me just read you the paragraph, okay? And then we can talk about it. So it's short, but I'll just read exactly what it says. It says, I direct my trustees, which effectively is the executor, on my death to have my remains cremated, and after a memorial service to hold a party that celebrates my life with champagne served along with good food and drink, with my hope that all will say of me, Sandra, my mom's name, Sandra would have loved this party. I would like that my children sit Shiva. We're Jewish, and Shiva is the usual Jewish mourning period after death. I would like that my children sit Shiva, and this can be spread among them and their homes or locations they best feel meets their own needs and obligations. That's it. So the Shiva part, I think is probably very common. I'm guessing in wills.
I don't think it's in a will. Generally, it's not in a will. I don't see that when I look at wills, but that's, that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. But that first sentence was really the focus. My mom decided she wanted to be cremated. That was for her important. It really related to her environmental concerns and keeping things as simple as possible. But then that part about holding basically a celebration of her life party. And to my mother, was very important because my mother was often the life of the party, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, she walked into the room, the attention went to Sandra.
Yeah, and in
It's a good thing.
a very positive way.
Absolutely.
She was a lot of fun. As I've always said about her, my mother's not funny, but funny things always happen to her. And we have stories galore.
We've sat down and listened to those stories literally for an hour. Gary and his wife Jackie and their family members would say, and it was so entertaining.
They're endless, and some of them are probably not appropriate for this podcast.
We don't have to go there.
But they're very funny, and her whole life was like that. And she, people loved her. She really did kind of light up a room, using that phrase. And she was a fast friend to many people. My mom moved from Ottawa, which is a city of about 1 million people, 23 years ago, to a very small town. Even I think it's a village called Bath in Ontario, which is about halfway between Toronto and Ottawa. And she lived
where her children, 2 of her children were in one town and one city, and one of them, like you lived in Ottawa and your sister lives in Toronto, and
yeah,
it was convenient.
Halfway point, which was important for it. Just made things easier. 2 hours drive for all of us. And she lived right on Lake Ontario, and one of the Great Lakes, and on a little street. And I think she really did. I know she actually transformed the life of this town. This town is about 1,000 people. And she lived right off Main Street. And at this celebration of life that we held in Bath, a few days after her death, many people came up to me and said, like, your mother really changed this town. Like, imagine someone coming from, a pretty big city to this little village. I mean, it almost felt to me like, you remember Mayberry RFD?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it not kind of like dusty Lake Mayberry, but that kind of really small town life is just so different from what she had always experienced. But she just fit in and brought people along with her, and just had such an amazing experience with fantastic neighbors. And so, anyway, that's where she ended up. Spent 23 years in a home in her house there, and we held the celebration of life as she had directed us to do 4 days after her death.
Yeah, and part of religious customs direct people on how to handle death. In Shiva, in the case of Jews, and Christianity, it can be a wake and different. And it's all different, but the most important thing, in my point, is to have the individual make those decisions if they want to. Or, this is not requirements, but if they want to, they can make the decisions and direct what it is that they'd like to happen. It's certainly not for everybody, but I think there are a lot of people who would benefit from it. Like, what are some of the things that weren't in the will, but that she wanted that you did?
Well, okay. She, in addition to her will, she actually has a handwritten memo that the lawyer had a copy of. She called it her memorandum of personal property. And that actually refers as well to this party. Let me talk about the party in a second. But in this other document, she also has a long list of friends that she said, I want the following family members and friends to choose an item from my personal property to have something to remember me by. This can either be jewelry, china, glassware, silverware, clothing, that kind of thing. So, and then she listed all the people.
But not the items.
Not the items, right? Now, it also says final approval of whether the person can have that thing is in the hands of the executor, right? That's good. So if you want to walk off with the dining room table, perhaps not, right? So, but, and we started that process, and my mom had about 200 pairs of earrings, and many people wanted a pair of her earrings. Some people just wanted, something from the kitchen. I mean, we still haven't completed that process. We're just really starting it. So she had that as a way of, this will be a way to remember in a very concrete way. And then, so do you want to talk about the party a little bit?
Whatever you want.
Yeah. So when my mom realized that the chemo was not working, and she knew a few days before her death that it was going to end, and she called me and says, "Get everybody here. I'm going to stop the medication I'm on, and that will lead to her death." And so we all gathered there, and we were with her in the hospital because she was in the hospital at the time of her death. And we were like my sister, my brother, and my mother's boyfriend got together and were with her at the time when she made the decision to stop the medication that was keeping her alive. And then she passed away very peacefully over a period of about 8 hours. But before that, once she knew that was going to happen, she had already been talking, for example, to one of her friends in her town that does some catering. And she had said, "I want you to cater this celebration of life." So we really kind of had, well, one had no choice, but on the other hand, my mom had sort of planned even this piece of it, not in the will, of course, but she had already said, I want to have this person do the catering, and told her the kinds of foods that my mom wanted to have. My mom was the queen of appetizers, and that's what I call her. And I think in her memorandum of understanding, she said at the party there really should be appetizers. So we held that we rented a hall, the one hall in the town. We spread the word informally, formally online to her neighbors. Word spread so quickly, as you can expect in a small town, and about over 100 people attended, and it was amazing. One of my nieces put together a video loop of all these amazing photos we had up. Somebody had written a song and sang the song. Of the many stories that we just talked about, there were some people who were actually there at the time of some stories, and they came up and told the stories. My mom said champagne. We had some champagne-like wine, and sparkling wine. And people love the idea that at certain times people would just say, and it really came out spontaneously, "Sandra would have loved this." And it really felt like it was sad, but it was more joyous.
And that was the goal. That's beautiful.
It was joyous, and bringing people together in that way was really important for all of us. And I'm thinking now, like, my will doesn't say anything about this type of thing. I think like you say, Peter, most people, I think, like the idea, but want to leave it to their kids or their, who's ever going to be following up after they die to do something. And it's usually just something very traditional. And this was not traditional. And we had to do in that first week because we were all together. My mom's grandchildren are spread out across the globe, across the US, Canada, England. We couldn't have got everybody back together again. It just wouldn't have happened. So we pulled it off. We were all there with so many of her close friends. And, I'm thinking, do I want to do something like this? How would I organize that? I would have to go back to my lawyer, frankly, and say, add this paragraph to my will. I think it's worth doing, perhaps.
I think so. I mean, just in that, not so much that it could be self-directed. That could be good for some people, and certainly in your mother's case. But it'll make it easier for your family and the who are in the grieving process, and it's joyous, and I love that. Death. In the U.S. at least, I don't know about Canada, but two topics that are verboten are sex and death. And here we have a great opportunity to, give direction about, our passing. I think it's wonderful. What got me was when you talked about the party, and you said that she had certain sandwiches that she liked, and she wanted these little sandwiches. And then that's when it hit me that, wow, this this is a topic for my podcast. This is important information. So it's great. I really, I think it's fantastic, and I'm happy. I'm looking forward to sharing it. I don't know if you want to add anything else, but I think our job is done.
I'm not sure there's a lot more to say, except that, if you have an idea in your mind of what you'd like your kids, your family to do after you pass away, I think it's worth thinking about, and actually not just saying it, right? Because saying it to one person, the things get lost.
You can't. That's the beauty of this, of what you did.
But making a decision to put it in a formal document, again, it's still up to your family to decide if they really can do it or not. It's just your wishes. But it's a thoughtful thing. It doesn't just leave it to us to say, well, can we do this? When can we do this? We weren't even sure after, like in the day or so after she died, can we pull this together right now? But we thought, then we just in thinking it through, we thought we just have to, and we focused on it. It wasn't that difficult. We rushed around, pulled together some, the food, the drink, the hall. It just all happened, and I think it's just a way. My wife Jackie, who you know very well, she's an occupational therapist, and she has always said, we're so good at keeping people alive now, but we're not so good at doing death. I think we're getting better. I know in the U.S. and in Canada, we're getting better at it.
Absolutely. Slowly but surely. And
this is not just the society's approach to it, but your individual approach to it. It's what do I want? It's not just who do I want to receive my estate, who do I want to get my assets. My mom had a black Mustang convertible, by the way.
Oh, who got that?
Well, I don't think anybody really wants it at this stage. It's kind of, my mom drove convertibles for years. But
that was Sandra, man. That was Sandra.
Not the most practical.
I mean, when I met Sandra, I was 10 years old. It was 1968. So that says it all.
So I'm not sure anybody actually wants that. So we may be selling that. But so many other things that are in her house that, she wants her grandchildren to have a certain piece. So I think it's just that one thought. It's like, if we want to do death better ourselves, it's worth giving thought to this. And it's not hard, I don't think, to go to your attorney and say.
No, that part's not hard.
Yeah.
It's a certain type of person and family that would do this. But what I love about it is that it enhances the grieving process. And everybody has, depending on how it works, and it's all organic, but people have different roles to do, and they're celebrating the life of the person who passed as they do the planning and then the celebration. So it really speaks to me. And I agree, I'm very involved in working with seniors and geriatric care, and there are a lot of great organizations, and more it's going to be there's going to be more focus on death and dying, and like, for instance, euthanasia is something that we're going to have to reckon with, because the largest demographic segment is those over 80, and we're going to be living into our hundreds. And I deal with people who often say, I never planned to live this long. And so there's a lot of focus in different areas, and I think this is a really cool one.
And I should just add, the document, as you heard, also refers to having a Shiva service.
Yes, yeah.
And we did that, right? We did that. That really, I think, was for us more than it's both a memory, but it's also something to support the family. And we did that. My sister did it in Toronto at her home. We did it in Ottawa at our home. And that was more of a traditional event, just one day instead of a full 7-day period. But that worked well. The week we had at my mom's place in Bath, Ontario after her death, in preparing that celebration of her life, in just being there together. We were about 20 people between my siblings, all of our kids, a cousin of mine. That really fulfilled in my heart the sense of what Shiva is meant to be, or what Awake is meant to be.
Yes.
So service itself was, doing one day felt right for all of us. It fulfilled her wishes, and it felt right for us too.
This is, it seems to me, it's like a Shiva on steroids, and I love going to Shivas because depending on who it is and the involvement, but it's certainly to help the mourners, but it can also be used as a celebration of life. And I know when I sat Shiva for my parents, it was a wonderful experience. I have stories to tell about what happened in the Shiva, and so I'm really appreciative, Gary. I love you very much, and I knew I don't do this a lot, but I'm kind of tearing up. I knew this would be a really great a great topic to discuss, and I'm going to really push it. We do social media, but I don't push it on other venues, but I'm going to really share this a lot because I think it's a great story, and it could really ignite wonderful things for people.
I hope so. I hope it's useful. I'm really happy and impressed that you picked up on this, and this, as you say, that week after my mom's passing is an important memory for us and for everybody that attended, obviously, because I think everyone would have felt if we didn't do that, something was missing.
Yeah. That's great. So thank you so much. I'll see you in a couple of months over Christmas time, going up to Ottawa. And
thank you.
I don't know. I usually sign off with something. I can't really think. I'm just, this is a very, for me, in a weird way, this is a very joyous experience. So thanks. And say, everybody pay attention, and hopefully we'll have other, not just educational, videos and podcasts, but also emotional ones, because that's important. So thanks a lot.
Peter. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Talk to you.